This is a massive thump on the nose for Manchester United today.
Yeah, it was a bad one. I mean, when the stadium's got about 20,000 fans left in at the end in a major game like this, then basically it's as bad as it can be and you're 3-0 down. I think the impact of taking Casemiro off will reverberate around the dressing room because he's one of the leaders, just like the Harry Maguire situation will have done a year and a half ago, when someone in your dressing room that's important to the group and has got a voice obviously gets hooked at half-time like that and he's made 2 mistakes. It has a big impact, but it's been a really challenging time for Manchester United for 10 years, whether you're Antony, an 80 million winger, Di Maria, an 80 million pound winger, Sancho that's just left this week, whether it's Marcus Rashford, who's a young kid that's coming through the ranks, who's struggling in the second half and the fans are onto him. It's really difficult, and managers have struggled, not just Erik ten Hag, every manager that's come to this club has struggled, and there is a feeling today of, are we going to go through the same thing again? But I think it's a time for a bit of calm. It's an international break, which is probably well needed for United. But Erik ten Hag's going to have to get the club into a position sort of challenging for Champions League towards Christmas, or else he is going to be in trouble. He knows that. He's been influenced to change his team, his staff in the summer. He's brought 2 new coaches in. That is not always ideal as well. So there's new messaging coming in, even though he's been here for 2 years. There's new technical directors, CEOs. There's a lot of change at the club. There are a lot of staff that have been here a long time that are leaving as well. So look, there was going to be some pain along the way of actually, if you like, interfering with the Glazer ownership. We're seeing that pain right here today. It's not going to change quickly. It's a sobering day for United, but one that I think just requires some calm, because we wanted change of ownership and we've got that, and there is some things happening and we have to let it settle in and bed in.
So you're calling for time and patience, quite rightly. We're only 3 games into a new season, but I suppose the question is, when could this get difficult for Erik ten Hag in particular? Particularly given the fact that they finished 8th last season and lost 14 games last season. That is...
Well, the last week's been different.
It's not a clean slate in that sense.
No, absolutely not. Again, finishing 8 and the amount of games they lost last year, obviously they got out of it with the FA Cup. That kind of lifted everybody, but you look at them fixtures. But for Man United, you wouldn't be taking anything for granted. Southampton away, there was... Fulham here caused them problems. Brighton obviously beat them, and now Brighton are going along nicely. But every game for Man United, I think, will be tough. Particularly, again, when I go back to it, I keep repeating myself, when you make 1 or 2 mistakes and teams are getting at you that easily, then every game's going to be a challenge.
Jamie, do you think that this manager needs time to deliver the change that the club is making, that Gary's talking about? They made some new signings, but debuts today. Or is there a danger that he is an obstacle to progress?
I'd say the latter. I don't think anything's really going to change in terms of the football that we play. What we saw there, we saw a lot last season where teams are just running at Manchester United's back 4. I've seen this with Liverpool, actually. You go back before Jurgen Klopp came in, and there was talk of Brendan Rodgers losing his job at the end of one season. He wasn't sure what to do, FSG, and they kept him, and they changed the staff. Exactly what Erik ten Hag's done here, and you'd expect something different. The manager's the main man. He dictates what goes on here, and not coaches. His philosophy of play, how he wants to play. And Brendan Rodgers was gone in October, and I mean, Erik ten Hag said in his interview, we'll see where we are at the end of the season. And yeah, it's early days, it's 3 games. I'd be surprised if he was still in charge at the end of the season, because the football, the way they're talking about play, and Jason Wilcox, I think, made a statement last season about a philosophy of play. There isn't one. We can see it with Slot in the first 3 games. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be successful. There's different ways of playing, but you can already see something, the way they try and play, the profile of players that they're looking for. With Man United, it just looks a mess of players on the pitch. And if I'm being totally honest, I mean, I mentioned this before, but the ownership didn't want to keep him. He won the cup final, and it put them in a position where they weren't sure what to do. So then they were scurrying around Europe, speaking to agents and other managers, seeing if they could find someone better than Erik ten Hag. They didn't feel like they could, so they stuck with the manager, and they didn't have the nerve to make the change that they felt that they needed to do. We know that. And listen, it's probably delaying the inevitable.
Does that make it impossible for him to be successful here, Gary?
Look, there's no doubt. I don't agree with the nerve bit at the end. He used the word bottle up there on the gantry, and that's why we were arguing for 20 minutes. But generally,
we don't know about that. So,
well, he said that the ownership bottled it in not getting rid of him.
Jamie said the ownership bottled it.
Yeah, at the end of the season up there,
they did.
Oh my God, how can you say they bottled it? They were really open about the fact that they went and looked for a manager to try and replace Erik ten Hag. They couldn't find one. Bayern Munich had a few months to replace Tuchel and found it difficult and ended up employing someone as a 3rd and 4th choice. Liverpool had 6 months to replace Klopp and employ Arne Slot was 3rd choice. It wasn't easy to get a manager at the end of last season for Manchester United or any club in Europe.
So you are openly admitting that they were looking for another manager.
You just said it.
Yeah, exactly.
They admitted it.
Exactly. So they're looking for somebody else, and they can't actually get. So they don't want this this manager. If you're happy with your manager, you don't start speaking to other managers. The people you're talking about, Bayern Munich and Liverpool, they knew the managers were going 6 months before the end of the season.
Still couldn't find a manager.
I know, it doesn't matter.
They
had to find somebody. If you're happy with your manager, you don't start flying around Europe speaking to agents.
Erik Ten Hag wins the FA Cup, and I think it shocks everybody. It shocks Ineos, and they then think, well, okay, we'll still go and we'll still go and look around Europe and see if we can find a manager. They couldn't find a manager that they felt would take the club forward at this moment in time better than Erik Ten Hag could. So he kept his job. Liverpool couldn't find the manager first, second and third time. Neither could Bayern Munich. It was hard to find managers at the end of last season. A lot of clubs in Europe were trying to look for a manager and couldn't find one. Ineos tried to look for one to replace Erik Ten Hag. They couldn't do, so they decided, because he won the FA Cup, they would stick with him. What part of that don't you understand?
Pardon? Could they have had Arne Slot?
They didn't want Arne Slot, probably. They didn't think that Arne Slot was more of a guarantee to take on this club more than what Erik Ten Hag was. Who, to be fair, it shouldn't be sniffed, by the way. It shouldn't be demeaned that 2 trophies in 2 years winning the FA Cup is all of a sudden now a really bad time. Finishing 8th in the league is unacceptable, but they've won 2 trophies in 2 seasons.
He pointed to that this week.
In Manchester United's history, there were many seasons where they went years without winning trophies. So Alex Ferguson, it took him 6-7 years to win the Premier League. It takes time sometimes. Jurgen Klopp, it took 5 years, 6 years. Arteta's on a journey of 5-6 years to try and win a Premier League. If they're winning trophies along the way, they shouldn't be sniffed at.
In Jurgen Klopp's 3rd season, they were in the Champions League final, and you could see something building going forward. If you think...
It's not good enough.
It's what?
It's not good enough.
So how long do you... Why was it going to... For the fact I'm saying that they bottled it in the summer, what was going to be different this season just by changing your staff? What difference were we going to see in Manchester United this season?
Really simply, there's a thought process that every manager that's been at Manchester United over the last 10 years is really bad. They're not good enough. What's he called? Van Gaal's not good enough. Rangnick's not good enough. Solskjaer's not good enough. Mourinho's not good enough.
Yeah, you always blame the Glazers. Who are you going to blame now?
Moyes is not good enough. So what they've tried to do is give a stable platform above him with different people, technical directors, sporting directors, head of recruitment, CEOs, all changed, that actually it might not be the coach that's the problem at the club. It might be the fact that they've not got the right balance around them. So let's get the right support staff in, which is what they've done, and see whether this manager can thrive under a better leadership above him. That's what they've tried. I don't think that's wrong.
Bruno Fernandes defends Casemiro after Manchester United's 3-0 defeat to Liverpool. Manchester United suffered a crushing 3-0 loss to Liverpool on Sunday, with Casemiro being blamed for the first 2 goals. However, Bruno Fernandes believes it's unfair to single out any individual player for the heavy defeat. Casemiro lost possession, leading to both of Liverpool's first-half goals at Old Trafford, and was substituted at halftime for the young Toby Collier. Luis Diaz capitalized on Casemiro's mistakes, scoring twice, while Mohamed Salah added a third after Kobbie Mainoo was dispossessed. As a result, United heads into the international break with just 3 points from matches against Fulham, Brighton, and Liverpool. Casemiro's decline was a major talking point last season, and his poor performance against Liverpool has only intensified the discussion around the 32-year-old. Many fans had hoped Casemiro would be sold during the summer transfer window, but there was little interest in him. After the defeat, Fernandes spoke to Sky Sports and refused to blame Casemiro for his errors or Mainoo, who also lost the ball in the lead-up to a goal. "We started the game really well and had more chances. We need to be more clinical. This happened against Fulham too. They were clinical," a disappointed Fernandes said. "Goals are always self-inflicted. You have to make a mistake to give them the goal. We don't need to point fingers at everyone. That's not going to help us now. When you concede a goal, you can't just blame one mistake. What's the point of saying Casemiro lost the ball or Kobbie Mainoo lost the ball? They lost it because they wanted to be brave. It's part of football. Don't make it about individuals." When asked if he would speak with Casemiro, Fernandes responded, "Casemiro is more experienced than I am. I don't need to tell him anything. He knows what football is about. He's played for the 2 biggest clubs in the world. Kobbie is an excellent kid. I want him to keep trying and doing what he does because it's part of his game. They are important players for us and will continue to be. We don't need to look to the past. We just need to do things differently. We lost the game. Congratulations to Liverpool, they were more clinical. I don't look at statistics, but the game was balanced." United's next match is against Southampton on Saturday, September 14th.